In this enlightening episode, Maia and Gia engage with Elizabeth Boults and Chip Sullivan, esteemed landscape architects and educators, to delve into their collaborative work, Wisdom of Place. This book and accompanying tarot deck offer a unique fusion of environmental design principles and spiritual archetypes, aiming to help individuals rediscover the sacredness of the natural world around them. Welcome back, magical ones, to another episode of Seeking the Light of a Thousand Suns. Join us on this journey as we delve into the mystical world of eclectic witchcraft. Brought to you by Maia, Skye, Reika, and Gia Storm. Together we share our eclectic tips and tricks with listeners at any stage in their chosen magical path. Get ready for engaging discussions, diverse knowledge, and a community that embraces the spark of magic in your life. I am Maia, Skye, Reika.
And I'm Gia Storm. Today we're walking barefoot into sacred territory, connecting tarot, landscape, and spirit with two visionary minds behind the wisdom of place.
Great to be here. Hi, Maia. Hi, Gia.
Hi,
thanks
welcome.
We're really excited.
We're honored to welcome you as authors and creatives. Would you like to tell us how your journey into landscape architect led you to this project?
Sure. Great introduction. We appreciate that. So as you mentioned, we're both landscape architects and we're teachers. And one of the concepts that we learned as students and that we teach our students is the concept of genius loci, which means spirit of place. So we kind of have this unique lens where we look at the landscape through art and nature and metaphysics, because we feel like a spiritual connection to gardens. They're very meaningful for us. And we also feel that the environment has this consciousness. So our mission, I guess, is to try to have people tap into that consciousness of nature and kind of relearn that sacred language that I think our ancient ancestors knew and that we're kind of losing today with our modern world.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of interesting that this is Earth Week or Earth Month, because I kind of came into it as I always drew. I was a graphic. I wanted to go to college and study graphic design. And then I happened to find landscape architecture in the College of Fine Arts. And I came across it, and it kind of combined art, which I was really interested in, with ecological design. And that really set me off on my path. And as I went on, I became really interested in energy in the garden, how gardens can reduce our dependency on foreign oil, but also combining this idea of art. And then as I'm studying these kind of concepts, I realized that the gardens throughout history were also incredibly important metaphysical concepts. They represented each kind of culture's interpretation of the cosmos. So that kind of combined the forces to go down the path of metaphysics and design and art.
Have you done any spiritual art and landscaping projects that you can tell us about?
So the current book that we have, A Wisdom of Place, it's right behind you, Maia, A Guide to Recovering the Sacred Origins of Landscape, was something really important to us, again, about this message just of environmental consciousness. So we were so happy that that book came out. And then about a year later, again, it resonated with a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And there was a call to have the illustrations published as a tarot deck and as like an oracle deck. So people are using, I mean, the book is great and it's full of knowledge and information. We try to tap into myths and legends and folklore from around the world because there is like a nature-based archetype behind those myths and legends. So, you know, the book kind of stands on its own, but to answer your question about how people are using it, and how we are using it, we can do like a 3-card spread for past, present, and future. And for landscape designers, that helps them, or any kind of creative endeavor, it kind of helps people think outside the box. Like maybe you're getting stuck in designing something one way, or you're only thinking about one condition, like the lay of the land or the topography, and maybe you haven't thought about the water. So maybe a water card will come up. So that's one way. And then another way is, you know, for people who are tarot enthusiasts or who are into the spiritual community, just to use it for, you know, consciousness and tapping into other kind of archetypes. And then just for personal growth too. And maybe all 3 of those categories are combined, but just sort of really thinking about those metaphors and how you know, if you pick a water card, there's going to be periods of flood and periods of drought. Like, yes, in ecology, that this is a natural phenomenon, that there are cycles, but then you can relate that to your personal life. Or if you're a writer, maybe you have writer's block and then, you know, suddenly the ideas flow. So just, I feel the cards are being used kind of in those 3 contexts.
Yeah, it's also interesting too. There was a very recent conference on climate design, and we found out that the organizers actually used the deck. They drew cards from the deck to organize the whole conference based on the concepts behind the cards, and that was really, really wonderful. So we also see it as you know, sort of this inspiring kind of composition of principles of ecology and cosmic thought that you can kind of look through. It's sort of a catalog of these kind of sacred elements that have been in existence throughout history.
Yeah, so in that respect, you could use it very practically, like thinking about how to collect water in your garden, or how to use pollinators, you know, and again, the pollinators are the birds and the bees, and those are very spiritual beings in a lot of belief systems. They're like conduits between the heavens, you know, the terrestrial realm and the cosmological realm. So thinking about, you know, and pollinators are necessary for food. So it's like everything's kind of all wrapped up. So it does have practical applications, but then it also, you know, hopefully has a deeper meaning for people too.
It is fascinating. Like my mind is just blown right now. Sorry. Okay, so let's talk about the deck itself. Can you walk us through the structure and how the cards are grouped or themed?
Sure. So as you probably know, the tarot was a storytelling device, like way back when it originated in, I don't know, the 1700s or something, a little hazy on that history. So we're using it kind of to tell that story too. And like a tarot deck, we have a major arcana and a minor arcana. And the word arcana means mystery. So that's also something we're trying to like bring to light and have relearning this language. So the major arcana for our deck are like the big principles of ecology, and things like, well, for example, in traditional tarot, you have the Wheel of Fortune. So we interpret that as the hydrologic cycle. And you have the Empress, and we interpret that as Pachamama, who's like the Andean goddess, right, of fertility. So there's a lot of correspondences in the major arcana. Of course, we have the moon, we have the sun, we have the world. For us is the genius card, the genius loci card. That's our card number 21. For the majors, so for the minors, just like tarot, there's 14 cards in each suit. There's 4 suits. And here, you know, in traditional tarot, you have the pentacles, the wands, the coins. So we sort of blended Eastern and Western, the 4 elements that make up the Western universe, earth, air, fire, water. kind of combine with the 5 elements that make up Eastern cosmology. So that's earth, air, water, wood, and metal. So we have 4 suits of earth, air, water, and wood. So the wood one deals mostly with the plant kingdom.
And you find too, like they're they alternate between my pen and ink watercolors and Liz's collage. So like our original intention was that they would alternate back and forth. So we'd have kind of this interesting yin and yang kind of quality of artwork and design. So like each one of us sort of like are playing off one another as we move back and forth between the cards. And it's also interesting too, in my class that I teach on sacred landscapes, when I first started teaching that class a number of years ago, I really wanted my students to kind of develop their own design vocabulary based on these kind of like metaphysical concepts. So like I assigned them, like 4 rectangles on a page to kind of interpret the titles, what the concepts of my lecture were. After the second lecture, I'm looking at their work as they presented this, and I'm going, these look just like tarot cards. How would you like to do a tarot deck based on these principles that are coming out of each one of my lectures? And they just overwhelmingly said, that's a great idea. That sort of began our journey of this idea of, this could be a really great way to kind of catalog all of these ancient myths and elements of ecology into a sort of a catalog that can kind of make us aware of all the individual things and reconstitute them, reposition them, kind of like, and create this sort of dynamic interaction.
And
It
the cool
sounds like
thing,
it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no,
I
please.
was just saying, it also sounds like too that with everything you both have incorporated into this, and I love that like that yin and yang aspect as well. Not just the masculine and the feminine, but like you're blending so many things together that like that balance is in there, and it seems like that would enhance the readings that much more. It's sorry, it's just like a side that I had. I was like, this is fascinating.
See, my brain
Oh,
I
was
was
in that same
loving it.
place. Yeah.
thanks so much.
And Liz is a fabulous collage artist. She's far too modest. I mean, I've loved her. I always loved her.
Well, the styles are very different, but they're very reflective of us, I think. I'm sorry, Maia, you were going to ask something.
Oh, I was just gonna say that Gia and I were on the same wavelength at that moment because I was thinking, I'm like, okay, so a traditional deck, you would use these stories and you'd use it for personal growth and for, your practice and for delving into your own subconscious for answers and stuff like that. And then I was thinking about it and I'm like, but in a traditional deck, sometimes they'll, put in of course, sacred geometry and all these other things, which I'm sure are in yours. But the difference is that we're like what she's saying too, was it's almost feels like it would be more balanced because it's got all of the nature world energies and such, not just the
The
history of
elements.
yeah, and the actual spirits of the land, and then you also have the history and all of the
Our ancient DNA.
and the elementals, not just the elements, like what
Yeah.
elements are in the earth, but then the elementals. And yeah, so I was at the same place you were on that.
Yeah, and there's 2 things I'm thinking of. So our students, so Chip teaches at UC Berkeley. I teach in UC Davis, in California, and our students are from all over the world. And I've taught a similar class on feminism and environmentalism and in film, but they bring their own sort of cultural beliefs to the class, and we have all the students like produce their own genius loci card. So it's sort of an creative, artful exercise, but it also makes you think about what your values are and what's important to you and like where you are grounded. So we've learned so much about different folklore from around the world, and we kind of think that that's one thing that can bring us together. Like Chip is always talking about sacred tree, that every culture has these commonalities.
Yes.
It's really remarkable, as we started on this path of knowledge, the elements that we found, that there is sort of these universal kind of beliefs that go back mythologically to every culture. And one of the things we found is that, typically, throughout history, the landscape sort of had a personification. People personified it with different gods and goddesses. And we kind of felt that, like today, if you really believe that, we'd be less likely to harm the landscape. For example, like you can go to the crappiest shopping mall in America and go to the centerpiece, which is usually a fountain, and you look into it, and what is it full of? It's full of coins. And then we were thinking like, well, why is that? Why does everybody come to a body of water and want to put money into it? Well, that goes back to one of our very first oracles, the sacred spring. I mean, the sacred springs are common throughout the world in almost every culture. And, it's because you would make an offering to the water goddess, that she would grant you your gifts, or like,
Yes.
like give you good direction. And this is so embedded in our DNA that when we ask people why do they do it, they don't even know why. Like it's just really remarkable. And this is just one example of many of these things that are so embedded in our DNA that we don't even know that they exist. And that's one of the things we're hoping the cards will do, is like just make you realize that this is in film, it's in our landscapes, it's everywhere.
And like, go ahead.
Well, and oh, go ahead. Sorry. Not to sidetrack, but so my background's in biological anthropology, and we talk a lot about DNA, right? Because there's so much of DNA that we don't understand. And it's interesting because, we're finding more and more and more about like ancient DNA that's embedded in us. And this is exactly what, you're bringing to the table with this aspect of the tarot, right? And I love this. Like my mind's blown. I'm loving this. Sorry.
But like you say, our ancient ancestors, they didn't believe that the boundary between the spiritual world and the physical world was fixed. It was permeable for them. So,
Yes.
and for another example of how these things are with us, how that DNA strand continues today. Like people still knock on wood, or they say knock on, like, and you lose the idea that, well, that was to ask the dryads of the forest for safe passage. Like you'd have to awaken the spirits of the forest before you would enter to make sure it was okay to go in. And we say it now like as a protective thing of the language that we use. It's like you put something out in the world and then you say knock on wood, to kind of protect that saying or that thought that you've expressed.
So. And the enchanted forest, the sacred woods, is pretty common also. And the sacred woods existed before there were temples and churches. That was a sacred domain. And if you also look at the other thing through history, especially if you watch Hitchcock's films or Shakespeare, truth is always revealed in the woods, north by northwest, like high anxiety, like all, vertigo. The truth is revealed in the forest. So that is something, once you become aware of it and you can begin to see it. And I think the screenwriters probably don't even know it. But that's another example of something that I think is embedded in our DNA.
So we kind of feel if we could bring back that sense of enchantment and that idea of wonder and appreciation of the sacredness of nature, that would, in all those beliefs and all that folklore, in all the myths and legends, there's an element of care behind it, right? So it's like principles of conservation are kind of built into those beliefs. So we kind of feel like if we tap into that, again, this might help just, take better care of the earth.
And I think there's two really important trends. Well, there's actually three important trends that I think are happening. One of them that I think was really great was this whole idea of reawakening of the Gaia spirit, that the earth is alive, that everything is alive, which is, kind of also a universal principle. And then it's also really wonderful to see the beginnings of giving the landscape personhood. that treating the river as actual people, giving them the same rights, as kind of, like that they have the same legal rights as humans, which I think is great. And then what Liz has been kind of like talking about is the WWW, which I think is not
The Wood Wide Web. The Wood Wide Web, the mycelium network of plant communication, send nutrients to a sapling or signals of distress if there's something happening in the community of trees and of vegetation. So that, I mean, that science has proven that
Yes.
that happens,
I mean, it proves that magic is all around us, and it's just like if you open your eyes and you realize that, like once you begin to realize that trees are communicating or certain adepts,
Yes.
like in Ireland, you hear the wee people singing and making music. Well, maybe that's just the atoms. Maybe that's the compounds, the different chemical compounds reacting. As we know, everything is moving, and that's the singing of the earth that some people can hear. And I think it's also ley lines or things that devices that would tie into those energy currents, and once we become aware that sacred places are generally on these kind of places of concentration of energy, which I also think is really true, because we know that you've been to certain spaces that make you feel really wonderful or enchanted, and then spaces that make you feel bad, and then spaces that you have no effect on. So this really brings out this idea of the genus loci.
Well, and it's important because like from my both the biology and the anthropology background, storytelling is how we pass down our information, right? And there's messages in it that have this similar to same theme throughout time. And it's almost like when we come to times within generations where some of those messages start to become lost, you start to see an influx of great innovations and ideas that bring those messages back to the surface. And I feel that that's very much what you both are doing with this. It's so important. And it's like science doesn't explain everything, right? So even how you mentioned about the atoms, right? Well, the thing about science is science can't tell you, okay, well, what is creating those atoms? Well, again, it could very well be, as you mentioned, coming from the earth speaking to us. We just haven't created the tools to measure it yet. And so I think this is so incredibly important because we're living through times right now where a lot of those messages are really needed again. That's just not to get too into anything controversial, but I think we need these messages.
Right. And not only that, but sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Maia.
Oh, and not only that, but people have forgotten, I know we talked about this too. People have lost how to connect with listening to those things, how to connect with interacting with those. They've basically over, centuries and centuries, eons, humankind has forgotten how to be in tune with these things, which even boils down to, connecting on a emotional, spiritual, and mental level.
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, we see it in our students who are a different generation than we are, and we feel too much screen time. It's like you really need to get out. You need to feel your feet on the ground. You need to feel the air on your skin, feel the sun, and again, those are all elements of nature that everyone on this planet experiences, so that's again another way to think about unity and what connects us.
Yeah, and to think, like in a positive light, one of the things we found, we were one of the directors of the American Society of Landscape Architects that was putting on the annual conference in San Diego asked us what we were doing. And we said, well, we've been working on these tarot cards. And she said, would you like to do a workshop at the next national convention? And we said, well, sure, and we thought about it, went by, and they're never going to accept that. So we wrote her and said, are you sure? And she said, yeah, we want you to do it. So we put together a workshop called Divining Design about and the objective was everybody would make their own oracle card based on their perceptions of the genus loci. And we'd have a little reading. We'd have like 20 or 30 people. Well, we get there and they have us in this huge auditorium of like almost 300 people. And like we're going, what are we going to do? Like we only have enough stuff for 25, 30 people. And, like nothing's more embarrassing than being in a giant room with 30 people.
Yeah.
Well, it filled up to capacity. There were people waiting. And what is really most remarkable, our whole plan was thrown off. We ended up with like 30 minutes and what are we going to do? Before we knew it, people were rushing up with their cards to talk on the mic and the overhead projector to talk about their interpretation of the genus loci. And we ran out of time. And, like our kind of conclusion here is we felt like, yes, like I think there's an opening, we're a little late arriving at the age of Aquarius, but it's happening. And just like this conference that was recently held where they used our deck to plan it, I really think that we're on the verge, like the cups of something really, really, really important.
And yeah, and everybody wanted to share that, which again is, I think, another way to just bring us all and on the same path of this consciousness of the environment.
So every time we do a workshop, we always have them do an oracle card, their personal interpretation that makes them really think about what that means to them.
That is
Love
so
it.
cool. Would you be willing to pull a card for each of us and interpret them live on the show?
Live on the show,
Absolutely.
sure.
Sure.
Yay.
So I don't know if you can see if this is the back of the card. So it's kind
Okay.
of, I'm going the wrong way there. Yeah. So this is little sort of the 4 elements that have become icons. So again, water, wood, air, and earth. And I don't know, we'll shuffle. You want to do one first, Chip? You want to?
Sure.
Okay. There you go.
So
Let's see.
who are you pulling a card for first?
Should we do Maia?
Sure. So I'll just spread them out
Whoever's
like that.
calling to you.
And then, like put your energy in this, and then I'll pick a card.
Okay.
Got your energy in there? Let's see what we have here.
If you can see it, it is the geometer.
It's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Right?
And if you can kind of see what's going on there, there's a figure and they're making a diagram on an old chalkboard, but behind it, there's like the Buddhist wheel, and then it's in a forest of
And what's nice about this, the geometer is kind of like the person in charge of moving forward, interpreting kind of like these sacred elements, and then kind of making them come visible, making the invisible visible, like being in touch with these hidden forces of nature and kind of transforming them into something concrete that we can kind of like physically see. So it's kind of a really magical,
yeah.
It's almost like a magical wand, like
that's kind of what you guys are doing with your podcast. So I can read from the little guidebook here. The roots of the word geometry come from the Greek terms for earth and measure. For thousands of years, humans have taken measures to try to understand their place in the world. In many cultures, mathematics was believed to be a secret language capable of revealing divine knowledge. The geometer implies stewardship and connects humans with the higher order of nature. And then at the end of our little guidebook, we have words of wisdom. So in the context of like personal growth, seek the harmony of the universe in all that surrounds you. And in the context of environmental awareness, we have discover the golden ratio, known as Phi, in weather systems, viruses, and crystals. And you are having a weather system right now as we talk. And then in the last context of creative growth, we have link reason with imagination and beauty.
Awesome. That was awesome. And the artwork was beautiful.
Maia, you were the architect for this whole podcast. I mean, you drive it, you lead it, we wouldn't be here without you.
I don't know like what you do in your profession as your job, but it seems like there is like a leadership kind of director aspect or manager to that, and I think that card expresses that too.
I just applied for a management position.
It's
Oh, wow.
gonna happen. Okay, so Gia, let's pick one for you.
Concentrate on the cards. Send your energy over the airwaves, the digital form.
Close my eyes and look. The equinox and the solstice. I don't know. This is so the last card was that was one of my collages. This is one of Chip's watercolors. And
so cool.
That is nice.
Chip can talk about what that represents, but this is an air card, and after he talks about it, I'll read it. I don't know why I'm going crazy there.
So one of the things about this card that I think is really neat, this is Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon. And what they've come to find out, they never believed it, but there was a woman artist from New York City that went to Chaco Canyon and discovered that almost all of the pueblos that were designed there that had been abandoned for hundreds and hundreds of years, but they all are aligned to the solar equinoxes and also the 18-year movement of the moon. The standing still moon, and they found that they're all oriented, to these different cosmological events in the Earth. And the bottom image is also pretty neat because they've just discovered Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is older than Stonehenge. It's this ancient monument. And what they found out, there's this kind of like serpent's head, with a serpent with the head of a goddess, that on the equinox or the solstice, I can't remember which one, the opening in the wall, the sunlight comes and lightens her face up. So we have all these great examples of architecture at one time was oriented to these solar and cosmological events, and we moved away from that. Our architecture and our buildings and our structures in the landscape seem to just float in space and aren't connected with these, like cosmic events.
So I can read from the guidebook here. So during the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, the sun rises and sets over the equator, marking an equal time of day and night. The summer and winter solstices mark the longest and shortest days of the year, respectively. So in the personal context, it says, act seasonally, attune your habits to the sun's position. And for environmental awareness, collect sunshine and retain heat in cool months. Provide shade and ventilation during warm months. So like passive energy kind of concerns. And then for creative, mark the flow of time in your work.
And this is a really important card now, considering the whole idea towards green energy and green construct that we've lost kind of touch with the movement of the sun and the moon. If we know how to orient our structures, we can conserve energy and make much more comfortable environments to live in.
Oh my, I love it. There's so much in that card too.
That or offline.
And then it's an air sign, and in the book, at the beginning of each chapter, we go into more depth about what those four sort of elements mean. So here I just have that air is the force and the rhythm of life. From our first breath to our last, we cycle oxygen through our bodies. We take in the energy and the spirit of air and we release it. And air is elemental and it upholds life. So, Gia, you've got the life force there.
I love it. I love
Nice.
it. Thank you. Thank you for reading that.
Yes, thank you. I really very much enjoyed that.
I know, right? Well, even the Pueblo, it's interesting because, so I'm originally from Colorado. My mom's family are Mayan, and there's just so many deep roots to the Native American landscape that my family has too. So I love the design of that card as well.
Yeah, and it's also, as you know, like, Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde, they found,
Yes.
turquoise and seashells and things and parrot feathers that meant that there was an incredible
Yes.
connection with Central America. That there was like, I mean, they say in the Four Corners, during the height of the Anasazi culture, there were more people living there then than there are people today. So it was an incredible, thriving, dynamic area, like, and with the kind of the kivas, the giant kiva outside of Pueblo Bonito is really, really fascinating that it's totally connected to the equinox, and the movement of the sun. It's really, I mean, it's just amazing. And each one of those structures is also related to the other one. They're not all kind of like sun temples or moon temples. They kind of vary
Yes.
between each other.
Yeah, we try to introduce and honor and value a lot of traditional environmental knowledge in the book. So we'll bring up some of these Native American or indigenous belief systems and practices, because that is really, really valued and really important. If you live closely with the forces of nature, you'll understand it. If, like Chip was saying, if you think the river is your mother, you're not going to pollute it. So just really shining a light on those indigenous practices.
Yeah, and I'll never forget in school we saw a film by Ian McCard on his design with nature. And it's funny, it's not in the book, but it was in the film, and it made a deep impression on me because he was talking with some of the Hopi elders, and they were talking about the earth, and they were talking about the earth mother. And that was one of the first times I ever came in contact with this idea of that the earth is alive, which is, kind of not universally the Gaia spirit, which I think is really, really cool. But, like it just made me aware of this kind of like, wait a minute, there's a whole different way of treating the earth and respecting the earth and kind of like understanding the landscape and kind of like how you deal with it and thank it and worship it.
Yep. Leave it better than how you found it.
That's right.
Yes.
So that leads me to asking, are there any upcoming projects that you have going on that are similar to this?
We started with the book, and that was a long process. And then producing the cards as a separate deck was easy. So that just came out this January. But I think what we'd like to do next is kind of explore these places around the world in an atlas form. So sort of doing some kind of graphic art piece that shows in an illustration like all the alignments or affinities that exist in the natural world and how they're connected, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it'd be something like we both love the idea of the old illustrated maps from the 30s and the 40s. Like there's also this
Oh,
beautiful map
yeah.
of fairyland that's this huge long thing that illustrates all of the elements, all these metaphysical elements from children's stories. It's really, really beautiful. We haven't quite settled on how the graphics would be, but we want it to be kind of like this, like almost like you're flying over the landscape and kind of looking, and these sort of elements are abstracted out so you can actually see them, not just a point on the, just not a dot and a number, but actually kind of illustrate like how they're connected to the larger world. And that's
Like bringing,
haven't quite come up with the concept, the graphics for that, but that's the idea.
that's really cool. Like you're bringing the participant into the card and allowing them to actually like participate into that. Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm
Bring
a
them
very
out.
visual
Like immerse.
person, so I'm like imagining all this. I'm like,
See, I got the feeling of like immersing, but from starting from a bird eye view and like kind of being
Oh, yeah.
immersed
Mhm.
in.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Like just, you know, we want it to be magical and enchanted and informative. So it's like, oh gosh, I'm going to Brazil. I could visit this, you know, powerful site.
Yeah, it
Or,
can be used, like a travel guide, but also something you can read and like also make aware of the sort of these universal principles like the sacred tree, and also maybe kind of like how you can tap into your own kind of expansion of consciousness. Like I always think it's great that where did Buddha gain consciousness? Under a tree. We
Yep.
have the tree of knowledge. And it's kind of like how do you find the sacred wood? Or like how can truth be revealed to you in the forest, or how can you come across oracles of water and kind of like interpret that? So it's kind of like how can you kind of open your heart up to the magic that surrounds us, and then how do you interpret it, and then how do you also use positive projection to take this magic and kind of spread it to a larger, like take that elixir and kind of broaden it to a larger audience.
so one thing we have been doing, which is super fun, because we like to draw, and I think a lot of people like to go out into the urban environment and draw. There's a big movement
Mhm.
called urban sketchers, like in every city in the world. So we've been doing what we call a spirit walk, and we did one in Central Park in New York, and we just did one here with the San Francisco Museum of Craft and Design, and we've done a couple other landscape programs around the country, but we'll go out into the landscape and we'll start with the grounding exercise. So really bringing that for like the geologic layer beneath our feet has that energy, bringing that chi up into our bodies, like a little meditation before we start drawing, and thinking of how our bodies align and really do connect the celestial with the terrestrial, right? Our feet are on the ground, our head is in the clouds. And then we'll look for like a landform, like some topographic element, like hills or some, even if it's man-made, but some element of earth, and we'll draw it. We'll look for something that could be a bridge, even if it's not like a literal bridge, it could be a figurative
Yeah.
bridge that connects the two worlds. We'll look for something that is like a portal, and we walk through it and we do a little guided thing about, and we're drawing the whole time.
Yeah.
We're asking everyone to draw.
Yeah, we
See
stop at
things.
each position, long enough to kind of explain this, and also we'll draw a card from the deck, which also kind of brings that element. And it's also really interesting to see. It's also scary to see how often the cards relate exactly
Yeah.
to that place we're in the landscape. It's almost like the landscape spirits are speaking to the deck and bringing forward,
The
this
card.
card. It's almost miraculous.
And again, even if it's a fountain, or hopefully it's a natural body of water, but we'll listen to the voice of water and we'll write a haiku. So that's a way that we're getting people engaged with nature and kind of bringing back that close relationship that, we started with, that we want to draw people to.
And it's sort of like it's a magical journey. It starts off with a starting point. There's a portal. There's kind of the kind of trials and tribulations. There's the tree. And then there's the return back to the beginning. So it has all of these really important metaphors of your own personal journey, and also like you can see like in no matter where you live, there is an opportunity to kind of experience one of these magical journeys. I mean, we even did one in San Francisco. We usually do these outdoors in the woods, but we did one in an urban landscape called the urban fabric, weaving through the urban fabric. And we looked at how the urban fabric also is alive and has these elements, because you've been in buildings that make you feel good, but they're also buildings that feel bad, but then they're
Yep.
haunted buildings. They're buildings as a kid you probably were afraid to go into, because as a child
Oh, yeah.
you can feel, and we forget about that as we lose that ability as we get older, but they're actually, as children, can really feel haunted spaces, and I think they're really adapt at feeling the genus loci or the spirit of different places.
There's still buildings to this day where I'm like, nope, not today.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep on going.
Agreed. Me and Aaron went to it was like It was a historical building. I think it at one point in time was like an airline hangar or something like that. I don't know. He's not one of those connected people. He doesn't really get like the tingles and the feels and stuff like that. And we started to walk inside, and as we walked in, like I barely got very far at all, and my whole body just raised in like goosebumps and that fear and doom feeling. And I'm like, stop. And I am like, I don't like it in here. And we took a few more steps because it was interesting enough to look, but it's ultimately both of us ended up turning around and walking out because once he confirmed that he was uncomfortable, then I knew it was time to go because he never has, you know, any type of feelings like that usually. And so, yeah, I don't know what it was before an airline hangar or before or after or whatever, but it literally made me feel like I was walking into a horror movie scene.
Oh my gosh.
But it didn't have that visual horror like, you know, the movies do, like with the blood and
Yeah.
all that stuff like that. But it literally felt like I was walking into a horror movie. It was just
Part of some sort of ancient history of the site.
probably.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
DNA that you were
Mhm.
talking about, Gia. Yeah.
Yes. You know, I was thinking too, you both brought up a really like another great example of how your cards can be used as well, in addition to, you know, doing one's own readings or readings for others, like you said, you know, you can go out into the environment and use the cards when you're going for walks or in, you know, even like your daily activities as well.
This is gonna
That your whole every day is a journey, like, and that's one
Yes.
thing about the cards is when you read them, you're creating your own sort of like journey. And every time as you know, the cards are different every time you read them. They change with the context of the space that they're in. And just, like looking at every day is kind of like a spiritual journey. Your front door is your portal. Getting to where you're going is the journey. You have to overcome certain things, like you get to where you're going, you learn something new, and then you kind of like have that return back to home, bringing that
Yeah.
knowledge back to where you started from. It's kind of that eternal cycle, the journey of the heroine. Every day can be a journey like that, of gaining knowledge and, like learning knowledge and learning and kind of transmitting that information.
what I think would be super fun, and the two of you might have already tried this, but instead of finding a place and then pulling the cards to connect with the place, I think it would be super fun to be out in nature somewhere already, and then using the cards as like a
Like a GPS.
sort of, I was gonna say treasure hunt, but that is like really not what I mean. Like being out in nature, pulling a card, and that's where I'm gonna go
That's what you
find,
find. That's your kind of like,
and then connect.
a road rally, like
Like,
you go to find.
yeah, so then you can connect with what's calling to you through the cards instead of
Yeah.
the other way around. That would be
Yeah.
really fun. Well, I will
That's
definitely be ordering one. I was going to order one before
Same.
this so that I could actually have something like that I was familiar with before the episode, but since we turned it around so quickly, I wouldn't have had it with enough time to really dig in beforehand. So I will be definitely getting myself one.
Well,
aw,
that's cool.
thanks.
Thanks.
Is there anything else that we hadn't touched on that you would like our listeners to know?
Gosh, I don't, just as Chip said, every day is an opportunity to just build that relationship with the natural world that we're all a part of and that we all share.
Yeah, and the magic is here. It's just each person willing to accept that and opening their eyes and looking at it, and accepting it. It's kind of like, everybody's had intuitions or premonitions, and I think it's kind of like giving that legitimacy, finding legitimacy in our dreams and using the dream world, actually using it as a tool. And all of these sort of like reading, it's not like reading the landscape, reading the oracles that are around you every day and interpreting them and just being open to that. Once you open one door, you open three. It's kind of like once you start writing your dreams down, you'll remember them. So it's like once you start this journey of enlightenment, it's kind of like spiritual alchemy. You're kind of like moving from chaos to knowledge, like and the divine light at the end. And I think that's everywhere. It's our in our daily life.
Well, I really want to thank you both so much for contacting us, for being on here, for everything that you've shared. I'm not one who believes in coincidences, and so greatly appreciated very much that you both came on. You
Thank
can
you.
find, oh, thank you. You can find the deck and more about the creators at thewisdomofplace.com. Trust us, you'll want this on your altar and your bookshelf.
Thank you, guys. It's been great having this chat, and I hope our paths cross.
Yeah, it's been really
Same,
enlightening for us. I mean, you've kind of
same.
sparked all kinds of new ideas for us and new ways to go and different paths. So it was a great synergy. We really, really loved it.
I agree. It was, yeah, it's same. You have me thinking too in different ways. I since I'm such a science person, but I'm also very spiritual. It just it's very enlightening and it helps to open up even more neural pathways for me.
Yeah. There's a whole new movement of spiritual ecology, which I think is
Yes,
really, kind of where we're trying to direct things.
it's really important too.
So, to our listeners, please follow and share our content so we can reach as many like minds as possible. Don't forget to check out our enriching extras available on our Facebook group and website. Follow the links in our description or go to www.seekingthelightofone1000suns.com. May blessings illuminate your path on your journey. And thank you for listening. Thank you again, Elizabeth and Chip.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
was
Have a
Thank you.
amazing.